and welcome to CNBC-TV18 and Kantar Brand Z C-Suite panel. I'm Shubhani Gharat. The panel is themed Building Valuable Brands in VUCA 2.0 World. As we contemplate what post-pandemic world might look like, in certain areas it is clear that volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity is going to be vast. So how do businesses create winning strategies and valuable brands during these complex times? To tell us more today on the panel, we have Sujit Ganguly, Head Brands and Communication, ICICI Bank, Sukleen Aneja, CEO, FMCG and Beauty Brands, The Good Glam Group. We have Kumar Gaurav Singh, Vice President, Marketing, Whirlpool, India, Dipinder Rana, Executive MD, South Asia, Insights Division, Kantar, Tim Kelsall, Chief Operating Officer, Global Client Practice and Chief Client Officer, APAC, Kantar. And then we have Siddharth Shakdar, EVP, Disney Plus Hotstar. All of you, welcome to this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rana, let's begin this conversation with you. VUCA is a term that we have been hearing for such a long time, and now we are speaking about VUCA 2.0. So what has really changed from the first time we heard the term VUCA to this VUCA 2.0, and how is the complexity of this particular, the times that we live in different from then, and what could be the learnings from there?
Right. I mean, so that VUCA was primarily driven by digital transformation, which I think has continued and accelerated. But in some ways, businesses are getting and consumers are getting to terms with it, right? So there's kind of less uncertainty there. But then you have added elements of uncertainty, which is, nobody saw the pandemic coming. I think Bill Gates did, but nobody else did.
Nobody saw the war coming.
Yeah, nobody saw the war coming, and then inflation, which I think Indians are used to inflation. There have been periodic bouts of inflation in India in the past. But for much of the Western world, it's a completely new phenomenon. So lots of headwinds, and I think as marketers, as brand builders, just more variables to deal with.
Okay. Over to you, Sukleen. What are the biggest challenges and opportunities, in this VUCA 2.0?
I think I'll break the answer into two parts. First, I'd speak of the biggest opportunity that lies ahead. The opportunity is in forging partnerships, collaborations and creating an ecosystem that can allow you to ensure that your business survives. And I think perhaps our greatest challenge is the fact that there's so many new issues that you're confronted with, which are absolutely new, not for yourself, but for the world. So how do you stay agile and nimble-footed in solving for it? And also be comfortable in the fact that you may not have all the answers. The biggest opportunity that perhaps lies is in the kind of ecosystems and partnerships that today businesses need to create and collaborate with. Because one of the things which I think all businesses have relied on is that there is, number one, an extreme merit in having internal sourcing and dependence of suppliers, of continuity within your country. So that at no point of time should the disruption affect business continuity. That I think has been one big learning for businesses. Second, I would say, is also with respect to the way we reach out to our consumers. Newer models had to be explored. A lot of the conventional world in the way we operated businesses has also gone through change. And I think agility has really been tested in times like these. So personal agility is business agilities, and has created an environment where everyone has to be open to collaborations. Because fundamentally it's the ecosystems and the partnerships that you're forging internally and externally that's actually going to help businesses survive. And that is where the question of survival comes in.
Yeah. And over the past 2 years also, Sukleen, you are someone who has changed organizations from a classic FMCG company to like a fairly new player, in the Indian market. So how do they approach, like times like this, and what is the difference, that you saw as a leader?
I think generally if you look at the environment in which you operate in large companies, you're very insulated to a large level, right? Because the organizations are extremely strong. There is a lot of stability that exists in companies which have been built with over a 100-year heritage, right? Younger companies are a lot more nimble. And I think the biggest change that you see in environments like these is how important is survival, how important is agility. And you're not as insulated because you are actually absolutely out there, right? And you experience business like you would if you really started afresh. It's truly the founder's mentality that gets tested.
Sujit, what about you? How has, marketing a bank shifted or changed from the pre-pandemic world to now?
So
Because, over the past 2 years, also the interest in everything, money matters, has also increased. Like
Increased
everyone
sharply.
is really tuned in,
Yes.
everyone is really interested where to put in the money, where to stay invested, and all of these things have really shifted in the
have
past
shifted
2 years.
a lot, right. So two things that we have seen or we have done post the pandemic. A is that the convenience of digital. We were anyway a digital first bank, but we have upped the ante significantly post the pandemic, and we have seen the rewards because customers are saying that I should be able to do or get my service wherever I am, irrespective of the location. And what we have seen is that when we have launched new services and new products on the digital, the uptake has been very high across geographies, across town classes, across types of customers. So that is something, I mean, anyway, we were on the digital curve as a country, we were going up, but I think it's got severely accelerated post the pandemic. That's one. Second thing that we have done for us, which has worked very well, is that what we have said is if we meet a customer, and as a bank, we can service a lot of needs for the customer. What we have said is this concept of 360-degree banking. If you meet any person from the bank, that person, he or she, will provide you all the services. It's a one-point contact. That is working beautifully for us as a bank because you don't need to go and meet different people across the bank. I think that's striking a chord because people are saying that time is precious. Don't make me go and meet different people. One person should take care of all my needs. It could be very diverse, from an account to a loan to a card to a business need or whatever. So those are things that have really worked for us in the last 2 years.
And Kumar, over to you. How, let's say, how have the priorities for an organization or a brand shifted, during these complex, turbulent times?
And I think that's a large part of the mental model that goes into thinking about how we redesign products and how we redesign our brand experience in a language that is relevant for today because there are so many more players out there who can reinvent themselves at the drop of a hat.
And how about dealing with the entire supply chain issues? Also, for a company like Whirlpool, let's say there used to be like, those key seasons like the summers, like, the festive season where consumers would go ahead and buy your product. So has that shifted, changed, and how are you dealing with that?
I think supply chain, for sure there were some hiccups that did happen during the lockdown stages. I would say now mostly they're behind us. I think the semiconductor shortages that we seem to hear a lot about is possibly a lot more with the auto industry than the durables. Having said which, yes, 2 summers were washed away in the last 2 years. We're all expecting to see a good festive sales coming up around the corner. So all fingers crossed to see that.
Okay, great. Siddharth, over to you. What are the biggest challenges faced by OTT brands today and how do you overcome those?
So some of the biggest challenges we face is the world today is far more cluttered than it used to be, right? And so earlier consumers could connect with a brand if the brand was fulfilling them from a transactional benefits point of view. But now, in addition to all the clutter, there's also consumers are changing and their identity is becoming even more important for them. So what am I? What do I stand for? These questions are far more important in the consumer's mind than they were yesterday. And if you've got to break out through the clutter, entertainment is a person's window to the world. It's their idea of exploring their identity. Also comes through entertainment.
Yeah, and how do you do that? Because, entertainment could be vast. Like if, like I have a Hotstar, on my TV and on my phone.
Thank you.
And, I watch football on it, I watch cricket on it, I watch series on it, I watch movies on it. So how do you, have that identity connect with the consumer?
That's a really good question, actually a very tough one to answer, but I think 2 or 3 things that one could do to understand this, right? So there are regular marketing tools through which you can understand this, psychographics, etc., through which you can understand consumers. But more than that, I don't think brands sometimes make the mistake of thinking it's a snapshot. And so you understand once, and then these are the personas that I'm going to chase, and these are the personas that I'm going to communicate with. But I think what we miss out is the fact that identities evolve. So you've got to kind of consistently keep in touch and keep understanding how your consumers think, feel, and behave.
It is time for a short break. This discussion will continue. You don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Hello and welcome back. With global factors weighing in on recovery, how can businesses build valuable brands in VUCA 2.0 world? Well, that's what we are discussing here on this panel with a couple of CXOs. Tim, there is this age-old term, brand valuation and brand value creation. So how has brand valuation versus brand value creation shifted during these times?
I think one of the things that we've seen is the importance of brand value as measured by equity. So, what the brand stands for in the minds of consumers has become more and more important because there's more choice within categories, and also consumers, as we've talked about, are under stress from different elements that are happening within the macro environment. They want shortcuts in order to make sure that they're making the right choice. Yeah. And also in the environment of, inflation and, pandemic, they want to make sure that they're making the right choices on behalf of their families, and also that they're getting, quality. And it's, if you like, peace of mind within a world that's changing around them, and also what they're faced with, ongoing, challenges. So brand has never been, more important, and we see that in the BrandZ ranking, that the importance of brand continues to play out. And those that have won through the pandemic and also coming out of it are the ones that really put the consumer first and the brand right at the centre of their organisation.
Great. Rana, we are meeting on the sidelines of BrandZ's 75 most valuable Indian brands report release, and I'm tempted to ask you, how has the term brand value or the phrase brand value evolved over the past few years, and where does it stand now? How has the definition changed?
I think what has changed is, in India specifically, we've seen the importance of brand purpose. So the Indian consumer is saying, beyond making profit, what is the bigger societal benefit or even a bigger personal benefit do you stand for? So that brand purpose has become very important. Again, in an uncertain world, people want to be inspired by brands with a purpose. And then finally, sustainability. So despite being an, not rich world market, Indians are very concerned about, for example, climate change and its impact on them. So they want brands to be stepping up and building a more sustainable world for the future. And brands which take a lead in that, again, we see they're more predisposed to getting purchased and hence building a stronger brand value.
Yeah. One of the crucial things, is when things get tough, finances are tight. So how do you go about that? How do you, do you stay invested, or do you, hold back your advertising and marketing?
I think
to create brand value. How do
you are heard the loudest when the room is quiet. I think that's when you build the strongest brands.
Is that what you did?
I think what we've ended up doing is we've ended up going back and reinforcing what the products are doing in terms of reinventing, whether it is wash performance, whether it is driving nutrition in the homes. I think it's important to re-look at yourself in the mirror and see the world around you and look at what it takes to reinvent. So I think we've gone back to investing into our manufacturing lines and our products, and make sure that the core product actually holds a customer experience that really rises above everybody else out there. And I think that's really where the story starts. You build products that you can actually make a difference, and especially in the durables industry, which is such a high-touch product. So I think that's what we've done. We've gone ahead and we've reinvested in a large part of our portfolio, reinforced and reinvented what washing machines can do for you, what refrigerators can do for you. And I think that's what you do. You go back to the core and you rebuild from scratch.
Okay, what about you, Suklin? Your thoughts on this?
I think if you actually see empirical evidence, brands that have stayed invested in downturns are the ones that actually came out stronger when the curve shifted. So clearly there's enough and more empirical evidence that supports brands to stay invested. I think what does change from a strategic lens is that you go back to building your core. The very reason why you're bought for the first time, or why consumers reward you with loyalty. So I think in that context, even if we see our business, we've absolutely stayed invested on the core brands, on the core promise. Despite the shift that happened, we continue to invest behind building the core propositions why people would buy you in the first place. So I think I'm a huge believer of being consistently invested despite the fact there's a downturn, because it will reward you when the curve will shift.
Okay, moving on, final thoughts on building valuable brands, in the times that lie ahead of the pandemic. Let's begin with you, Sujit, again.
I'll just link it to a question you asked some time back, opportunities and challenges, and I think that will be relevant to this question. So, the situation is such that opportunities and challenges are part of the continuum. The reason I'm saying it is because in a category like banking, thanks to technology, there are new offerings coming in every quarter, right? There are fintech brands coming in, there are offerings coming in from abroad, so there are offerings dime a dozen. What is the way to do it is that, I'll just give you an example. Something called an account aggregator has got launched, which you must have heard of, where people can apply for loans to an organization where you don't have your account, but the organization, the bank wants to know what is your salary, how much money you have in your bank. You don't need to put in your bank statement. Through an account aggregator, the organization giving the loan can access it from the bank where you have your savings account, right? So this is just an example of technology coming in. Now this means that organizations can now start giving loans even if they do not know the account profile of the person who's seeking the loan. Now organizations that can cater to this technology seamlessly will be winners. This is a very small example that I'm giving, that if the situation will keep changing every quarter, every year, organizations that are fleet-footed and are able to understand which way consumers are moving will be the ones that will disproportionately gain in the years to come.
And finally, what would VUCA 2.0 really mean for an OTT player like Disney Plus Hotstar?
For example, if you look at VUCA and this pandemic specifically, when mobility got taken out of the picture, we started looking at what do consumers care about today, right? So it became about the fact that I cannot go out and have this experience, but I want to understand about all the experiences that are there. In a way, it's a bit of a third-person view of traveling or looking at some fantastical show or something like that, where it's almost a voyeuristic look at it, where I'm not a part of it, but I can imagine myself being there. So we started focusing on entertainment like that, which would talk to that particular audience and that cohort. So those are some of the ways in which we kind of as a brand evolved and gave focus to, in terms of fantasy, for example, became big at that time, and superheroes like Marvel, etc. We started pushing it out in different languages because suddenly there was a lot of uptake for looking at fantastical journeys. Because currently I'm cooped up here, so fantastical journey is my way of a release. And that's how we evolved. And we started dubbing everything and we started putting it out in multiple languages. And there's been massive spike, for OTT on that. Not only that, we started, one mistake you make is you do all of that, but you market in English, right? So we changed all our marketing even for Marvel titles, which were very English forward a couple of years ago. We now market in the local languages, each of those Marvel titles, right? So in that sense, we also evolved as a brand and understood that maybe this is what the consumer needs at this point. That was their identity at that point. And again, it may evolve to somewhat different once the pandemic is over, right? So to understand that behavior and respond to it, I think this is one of the examples about what we did in the pandemic.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. And thank you for watching CNBC-TV18 and Kantar C-Suite panel, Building Valuable Brands in VUCA 2.0 World. Goodbye.